I was about to make a
We're over
speech.
here.
Where do you want us to go? You go over there, I'll go here. I see a Leafs jersey, Leaf sweater here. What's going on? Maybe, I think this is your seat.
Do we have? I don't think so. I'm a Blue Jays fan. I happen to know that Viggo has a very secret collection of Leaf jerseys. I know that this would not be the only one he has. You have to admit that's true.
I have one signed by the crew of History of Violence because they got tired of me wearing the Habs sweater every time I was off screen doing screen violence. But it's true, I did. I would put on the Guy Lafleur's number 10 and, shotgun, whatever was required.
So, David, why do we have a Maple Leaf sweater on stage?
I think that the Leafs really wanted Viggo to have it. And I think it's signed by a well-known Leafs player. I think you should take a look, at least.
Gloves? Anybody got that?
It's okay, you can gel later.
Oh, wow. Okay. There we go.
Ooh.
Impressive. Thank you. We're in Toronto, so let's... There we go. Good sport.
I think the Habs are doing better than the Leafs this year, as far as I can tell
Barely.
the standings, but
Barely.
barely.
I was up there last week to watch them lose against Ottawa, so... But we did have a very nice... I know you watched this. You watched us beat Chicago, didn't you?
No, of course not. Why would I?
No, but you're more of a baseball fan, aren't you?
I used to, when the original 6 and beyond that, I bet you don't remember the Penticton V's, but I do. They won the World Cup in 1955 against the Russians.
Right.
They were Penticton, So my hockey cred goes back a long way, but somehow I've drifted into baseball. Don't ask me why, I don't know.
Who would have known that David Cronenberg was a baseball fan or a sports fan? Anyway, just before Christmas, yeah, exactly. We talked about sports all evening.
Formula One.
Formula One, boxing, I like boxing.
Well, Formula One I know well because David and I share that passion. Just before Christmas, we had a wonderful guest, Guillermo del Toro, who was on this stage, and he described the relationship between David Cronenberg and Viggo Mortensen as one of the most interesting and fascinating director-actor partnerships of the last 15 to 20 years in cinema. So tonight we're here to explore that relationship and talk a little bit about it. What a setup, eh? But maybe you can just talk a little bit about how your relationship actually started. I'm not sure who to pose this question to, whether it's a David question or whether it's a Viggo
It was a kind of sleazy alley. I remember in some American city.
It was raining.
It was raining and foggy. And
just the two of you, or
I
there
think he
were
was looking
agents
for
around?
drugs, actually. And I had some, so
We hit it off right away.
we hit it off right away.
No, I remember, to be honest,
You can be honest a little bit.
just for a change. I remember reading that script, which was 120 odd pages, 126, 7 pages long. David Cronenberg would like to meet you. This is the script. I read the script. And I thought, I read it immediately because I love David Cronenberg. It'd be amazing to work with him. And then I read the script and I thought, it's not going to be this. Because I didn't, to me, it was kind of like the source material, as I found out later when I read that book. Just pulp, kind of just mindless mayhem without much, at least from my point of view, profundity to it. And I thought, nah, it's just not, I don't see a great movie here. It's very long. It's just relentless bloodletting for no particular purpose that I could see. And then they said, well, David's going to be in Los Angeles, where I was living at the time. And correct me if I'm wrong about any of this. And he wants to have breakfast if you want to anyway. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. And then we met. And every single thing that that I found, because he said, well, why? I said, can I be honest? I said then too, and he said, sure. You can have fried or scrambled. And no, I said, there's a lot of things in the script that I don't understand why they're there. I don't like a lot of things in there, and it's just one person's point of view. But he goes, like what? And then we talked for quite a while, an hour, 2 hours, I don't know. And every single thing that I found I didn't understand or that I objected to, he was miles ahead. He was already working on it. There was a connection right away as far as how we saw the story. Anyway, that's what I remember. And maybe it was all lies. But
so I thought I will agree to anything just to get him in the movie. But actually, in truth, the script, I can tell you, they said, the producers and the distributor said, you know, we'll want you to go to Comic-Con with this movie. I said, Comic-Con? You know, I mean, that's an interesting phenomenon. People dress up as Star Trek characters there. It's all sort of very geeky, you know, Star Wars, Star Trek, monsters, stuff. And they said, yeah, because, you know, the movie's based on a graphic novel. I said, it is? This is after we made the movie. And so I went to Comic-Con, and it's you know, San Diego, and it's really fantastic festival of you know, geekiness. And everybody's very enthusiastic, but there was an audible gasp of disbelief when I said to the audience, well, I actually, you know, I was asked, how did you make that transformation from graphic novel to movie? And I said, well, actually, I didn't know that it was a graphic novel. And they couldn't believe it, because that was the whole reason for being at Comic-Con, the connection with graphic novels.
you haven't been invited back, have you?
I actually haven't. I actually haven't.
But to back up, David.
But just to say, the script changed a lot, and Viggo had a lot of input into it, and it was, I did a lot of rewriting, and I had the original writer of the screenplay, Josh Olson, do a lot of rewriting. And that was a case where it really had to be bashed around and, you know, whipped into shape, because it had some potential. The basic concept, I thought, was really viable, but the script really wasn't there. And I think he got an Oscar nomination for
he did. No,
best
you
screenplay.
guys did a great job. But
Yeah.
you said, I remember you saying at that breakfast, that initial meeting, that he said, you know, trust me, this is, I'm with you on. You did. You did, as you were holding my hand as well, and looking sort of above my eyes, like at my forehead, but you had this. You looked angelic, and. No,
it works every time.
Yeah, apparently 3 times, and anyway, no. But you said, trust me, it's going to. Yeah. I'm on the same wavelength with you, and there's some other things that I also have objections to that I just want to alter a little bit. And in the end, the script was. You said it's going to be much leaner, and it's going to be a lot more about reactions, and it's going to be a lot more subtle. And in the end, I think it was 70-odd pages. I mean, you took out 40 or 50, you and Josh. Yeah.
And was Viggo you had him as the actor? You knew exactly when he was your Tom Stahl
from
the moment you read the script?
From that point he was, yeah.
And how did he? That was about 12th or 14th on the list, wasn't it?
Well, no, I think you were the first we went to, actually.
That's not true.
You sucker. Yeah. And honestly, I mean, you might say, and we're being honest here because, you know, you're a special audience. Trust me. Why would I get involved with a script that was so far off? And the reason was money. Honestly, it's like I didn't have any. And I had just done Spider, I think, which I did for no money. I mean, the only way we could get Spider made was to I might think, have I got it in the right order? Spider, we all worked for nothing. The actors, the producers, the directors, because we couldn't
stop shooting, didn't you?
We could, yeah, we had to stop shooting. We couldn't raise $12 million to do it. We could only raise $8 million. And that meant that nobody got paid, literally. And that includes Ray Fiennes and Miranda Richardson. I mean, everybody, but we were so invested in getting this spider to come to life that we couldn't bear to let it go. So, but that's like 2 years of work with no money. And so when New Line approached me and said, are you interested in this? I said, what's the budget? You know, and it was really because that was the closest that I've ever come really to doing a studio movie. They financed it all. I didn't have to go hustling for money, which is what you normally have to do when it's a co-production and you put together all kinds of financing. So I wasn't exactly just money for me. It was to have a movie that would have a decent budget and where you'd actually get paid, you know, the going rate, nothing amazing, but you know, get paid. And I couldn't let it go, but I also didn't want to make a bad movie. So that meant
working on it.
having a collaborator. Now, I'm going to tell you a funny story that you maybe haven't heard, Viggo. This is all being really honest. I met a director who talked about talking to you about doing a movie, and he said, and you know, Viggo gave me notes. And he said it like it was the most outrageous and also quite hideous thing that he ever experienced. He had an actor gave him notes on his script. I don't think he had written the script himself, but it was a script that he was ready to do. Do you know who that guy was? I actually can't even remember his name. But he was shocked. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's a collaboration. You know, I mean, not all actors want to do that or are interested in doing that or can do that. But if you find somebody who's going to be your leading guy and has a good brain, movie-making brain, why wouldn't you, you know, listen to him? So that, in this case, that was crucial, you know, because I needed a collaborator to make this a better movie.
And what other qualities did Viggo have that you were looking for in this role?
He was cheap. And he was available. What else is there?
So maybe on that note, we should go to the clip. What's remarkable here is it's all in the eyes and it's in the voice. And it's a moment in the film where this character changes becomes a completely different character. Yeah. It's a key moment in the film.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, I mean, it's when the kid is looking at his father, you can see that he's seeing a completely different man that he's never seen before. And that's what I needed from Viggo, is somebody who could play Tom Stahl and Joey. They're two different guys. I mean, they're the same guy, but there's a secret life that's revealed in the movie.
But I should watch out with the notes. I should watch out with the giving the notes. That is, if I want to work with someone other than you. Right?
Yeah, I could see that.
Apparently.
Actually, Tom and I got along okay, but Joey was an asshole, basically.
Joey didn't give many notes, though.
No, he didn't give notes. That's because he was illiterate. But anyway, so yeah, and also Joey is dangerous, and you have to have someone who can look at Ed Harris and suddenly be a real threat to him, you know, and you can see that in that scene. And so there are a lot of actors that can't do that, you know, and both the physically and just the emotionally. There's a lot of, anyways, it looks like a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
Viggo, to prepare for a scene like that, I mean, do you do any special preparation at all? Is it just like all so natural? The voice part, the eyes, you know, the steely look in the eye. I mean, David's camera moves into, it's a key moment.
I think you have to trust what the scene's about. I mean, we talked a lot before we started shooting the movie, so we sort of got to know each other on the phone, and then, I mean, David doesn't rehearse, but you can talk together about what you're planning to do, and I remember before we started shooting, that was a scene, that was a part of the movie where we knew there had to be some sort of transition, but it's not a specific thing, it's just you know that that has to be there, but it's not just there. I think when, what's really good about the script, the way it ended up being in the movie, is that when you watch it a second time, you're looking for little glimmers of Joey much earlier than that, you know? And that was fun in the playing. I remember a lot of times after we'd do a take in other scenes, you know, early on, where you were gauging, okay, let's not let it out yet, that's too much, or that's too little. It was very subtle a lot of times, and you would say, no, let a little bit more out there, or that's too much, I don't want to see anything there. You know, it would be those kinds of notes, and it was fun imagining what it would be like seeing it a second time, you know. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't usually, when I'm working, I'm not thinking, oh, the audience will like this or they won't like it. You're just trying to tell a story as truthfully as you can. I guess we were speaking about for us seeing it a second time.
That's right.
As much as anything.
That's
you know,
right.
It's like the second time watching this, you're going to see it. You probably won't see this, that, or that the first time, although you may notice something that's a little off. You know, it's like too perfect or something, too nice, too something. But you got to be careful. It can't be too much, you know, and you need someone who can guide you through that. If you're doing it on your own, you probably overdo it or underplay it sometimes. But David was great that way. That's how we sort of made that character work and his relationship with other people, particularly with Maria Bello's character. It was just fine-tuning how much to reveal. Very rarely did you say, well, let's do one of each to have the option. You knew when you were doing it, you know, what you wanted to have.
I couldn't afford to do two. But yeah, I mean, it's a hidden life. The story is about a man who is exposed because of an incident and to publicity because of a violent thing he does in defense of his family, and then his criminal past is revealed, and you realize he's a completely different person. And when the audience comes to that, we wanted them to say, oh, yes, of course. But we didn't want them to not be surprised at the same time. So it's a really fine little tightrope, and every moment in the film we had to decide, you know, what do we see here of Joey in Tom Stahl?
Had you seen other of Viggo's films which made you feel that he had that kind of adaptability and sensitivity?
No, I thought he was talentless at first, really.
But malleable.
But I could
And
mold
cheap.
him. I could hypnotize him.
You could add that, malleable.
Malleable
cheap,
is good.
and available.
As well as cheap. That's true. That's true.
I mean, was Lord of the Rings something that you kind of looked at and thought,
Never
oh, that's...
seen that, have you?
I actually have not seen all of it.
Fast forwarded through it.
Because, you know, he's got a beard and he's got a sword. I don't know. Just, you know. And then when we put a beard on him for to play Freud, that was a different kind of beard than Aragon.
It was real.
Yeah, it was a real beard.
They both are.
Yeah, it's an instinctive thing, you know, because you had played dangerous characters before, Carlito's Way, you know, and so I knew that Viggo, you know, I could see that he could have menace. I thought he totally could not play a sympathetic person because he was completely not sympathetic. But
Habs fan.
no, actually, in the meeting, it was really good because I could see different things just sitting across the table from him, things that I actually hadn't seen in the movies, but I knew would be there on screen.
I talk with my mouth full and stuff like that.
Yeah. And the scar here.
So does an actor ever surprise you on set? I mean,
All the time.
people talk about this incredible...
All the time.
They do.
I expect it. I demand it. Because I don't... some people think that, you know, they said, did the movie turn out the way you wanted? And I realized that they think that you have the whole movie in your head, and then you can now run the real movie side by side with it and see where it didn't match. Or it's nothing like that. It's very organic, and it grows. And
I think they think that people might think that about you. I mean, I had some notion that it might be that way before meeting you, that and working with you, that you'd be very meticulous and everything would be planned out to the nth degree. And you do plan everything really well, which is what I like to do also as an actor, you know, lots of research, and which is, I think, part of what's great, or maybe the main thing that's great about working together is that we share the research we do before and during the shoot. And, but you look at your movies and I don't know, I think that people maybe have an idea of your persona as being so meticulous that there are no accidents. It's all planned to the nth degree. And in reality, you plan, it seems to me, you plan everything. You try to think of it from every angle so that when you get to the set, you can throw it all away and just see what happens. And that's what I like to do as an actor. So
no, it's true. I mean, I think people do think that my films are very controlled, you know, and would probably imagine that I did storyboards and had everything. And I'm a totally anti-storyboard person. I never use them. What I do is you prepare the field, you know, for play. You get the players, you get the field, but you don't know what's going to happen in the game. It's like that. Hockey or baseball, you know, Leafs or, you know, whatever. And so you don't know, and that's, for me, that's just natural. And I know Fellini said, you know, why would I want to know exactly what the movie's going to be? I'd be so bored making it. And Orson Welles, who is very much considered a control freak kind of director, said a director is someone who presides over a series of accidents.
that's good.
And I think it was Hitchcock really who is responsible for the presence of storyboarding in all schools now. I talked to some students and they say they are totally taught to use storyboards, and storyboards are basically, it's like doing a comic book or a graphic novel of the movie with every shot set. But it's done before you've even cast it or got the locations or anything, so it's all very theoretical.
Yeah, the problem with that is that when sometimes I've found with other directors who do use them a lot, that they can limit themselves. You know, you arrive on the set and they say, no, what I worked out, I mean, months ago, or before your cast, know that you're going to be in the corner and you're in the chair and you have your left leg crossed over your right, and then she's there and she, and I always say the same thing, which is probably why I don't work much anymore. That in the notes is, well, why don't you let us do it, and then you can see what you like and what you don't like.
So this is,
but you do limit yourself when you say it's got to be this way. We don't have time. We have to have these shots. That's part of it. The budgets and you know, they think they're going to save time, but what you end up, you waste time because you end up doing lots of takes until the actors get comfortable with their forced blocking. And instead of just letting them to some degree find, okay, what would you do here? Okay, and you watch. I mean, you do it very quickly. You watch us do it once, and you say, okay, that's pretty good. Well, I'd alter this and that, and then you, based on that, that's where you place the cameras, and you get on with the day's work. But other people force positions and behavior even, and then you end up doing about 10 takes before you even feel comfortable with something that's imposed on you. You know what I mean?
Well, there's another aspect to that which I don't know a lot about because it has to do with the way studios work, but now there's a thing called previs, which is basically you make an actual little movie using computer graphics of your movie beforehand, with little figures. And I remember, and part of it is because a lot of people who are in control of studios and producers and stuff actually cannot imagine a movie from reading a script anymore. That's that's one of the reasons.
I've had directors say, but that's not in the previs, what you just did, like in a run through. Like,
I saw a previs for a section of Total Recall. And I remember that the chairman of Sony came out and said, I know the movie's going to be great because the previs is wonderful. And in the previs, the little robot character, who was the lead character, looked like Eric Bana, because at the time he was going to play the role, but Colin Farrell ended up doing it. So in the previs, it's like Eric Bana. It's just very bizarre. And it's all about control and lack of imagination and fear, you know. And people feel if they've got this previs, they've almost got the movie. And I understand the fear if you're going to spend
It's an economic thing, I think.
you're going to spend $200 million
Yeah.
on a movie. So you're in a position these days, I think, if you want to have the freedom that we've had, the organic freedom to create, and then even I like the fact that the movies seem inevitable and controlled. You know, that's part of the art. But it's not the way they're made. They're made spontaneously with a lot of input of a lot of people, very spontaneously. So there's a split now between big studio movies and 10 or 11 million dollar movies, and there's not much in between. That's
Does
the thing.
Scorsese do
I think he does. I think he does do a lot of
storyboards?
storyboards. I think so. Yeah.
So it sounds like improvisation, but I don't think that's not.
It's
the
not
word you- It's not
improvisation.
improvisation. You actually got a very
well,
structured.
in the sense that
Are people
You make
playing
the
with
best
the words in the
preparations for
script?
accidents to happen.
Yeah,
with the,
that's right.
It's like,
yeah.
but if you don't know, like if for example, an actor I'm working with suddenly does something I didn't expect, and I've just prepared it, let's say, in the mirror, I'm going to do this gesture, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to touch her in this way, or look at him, and they do something different, and you haven't really prepared your character, knowing how they behave in any circumstance, or imagining that, then you're going to be frozen. You're going to go, well, I don't know what to do. You just did something I didn't expect. And the same for a director. If the director doesn't know his story, know his characters in a way that's almost like knowing a novel or a short story, you know, I mean, I think your approach is kind of literature-based. In other words, your movie, it has the tone and the rhythm of the story, you know. It's like literature. It's understanding, it's being able to read the script and understanding what it calls for in terms of the sound and the movement, and not enforcing, you know, the camera on that. Just, well, what is it about, you know? And I don't know. I think it's more fun to do it that way, also.
It's the
Is
only way
it-
I can do.
Is it all of the actors and you, or are you working singly with the actors? I mean, the scene that we've just seen here, for instance, David, how would you have worked
Or
that
work with
through?
everybody. The kid, the guys in the background, everybody.
Together, collectively?
Oh, we rehearse the scene.
The whole thing is
We
rehearsed?
rehearse the scene I don't do rehearsals, but we do blocking. I was going to say, how physically? Because for me, first it starts as a kind of sculpture in space it's like cubism, actually. I have to figure out where everybody is relative to everybody else, and then where the camera is, and they're all moving, including the camera. And when I first started to direct, that was the hardest part for me. It was not the dialogue or the emotion of the actors, but it was the space. It was dealing with the space and the three-dimensionality of it. That's why I'm not that interested in 3D movies, because for me it's always been 3D. I've always had to work with 3D, so it's not that different for me. But so yeah, we would block that scene. Where is everybody, and where do they move, and how, and then only then do I decide how to shoot it. In other words, I don't know how I'm going to shoot it, and I don't know how we're going to work with the actors. But that's the thing, the actors have huge input at that point. And if you have storyboards, you're really cutting the actor out of that movement through space, because
it
you're
takes a
saying,
while.
no, you've got to stand there, then you've got to move there.
And it takes a while to get comfortable with that and give a naturalistic performance if you're not convinced that that's where you would
Yeah.
be standing, or you don't have any conversation. There's a recent shoot I did where the producers were constantly, there's a very limited schedule and limited budget. And so they were always worried about us getting our day, which you're always worried about. It doesn't matter how big the movie is, I think. But they kept complaining about the fact that in the morning, when we started, or before we started any sequence, there'd be that conversation. It's like, well, this and that might go on for 45 minutes.
Yeah. And you're not shooting, so
And you're not, and they're going crazy,
you're not
or an
making the movie.
hour.
Yeah.
And then they came to me separately, because I was playing one of the main parts. They said, well, you know, we have to talk to this, you have to help us talk to this director. And I go, about what? Well, a lot of time is being lost by these things that you do in the morning where he talks and you guys all talk together. I said, you mean where we come to an agreement and then we just start to work? And he goes, yeah. He goes, you're losing a lot of time, you should just start shooting. I said, well, we don't know what we're going to shoot if we don't do that. And I'm telling you that I know you look at it and it's like, oh my God, it's 11 a.m. and they haven't shot anything.
Yeah.
But if we didn't do that, then every time you change the setup of the camera, we'd have to talk all over again, because nobody would know why they're doing what they're doing. By doing that in the morning or before that sequence is shot, I think you save a lot of time. And people are at ease. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do, including the crew. They're not, okay, well, the boom, this, that, I can enter here and I can be here. And you'd save a lot of time, I think, doing that. But some people don't think so. They just see time is money and you're wasting it.
Let's move to the second film, Eastern Promises. Was it really clear to you when the script floated into your purview, David, across your desk, that Viggo was going to be your Nikolai Luzin, your lead character?
I don't remember.
I wasn't so cheap anymore.
Because of History of Violence, his price and his ego went, you know.
Not true.
I honestly don't remember. I think...
The ego, yes, not the money.
On reading the script, you know, because I always thought Viggo had a Slavic look, and I think it's part of the Danish genetics. His father is Danish. And it was obvious to me that he'd be great for that role. And so there was never any thought of going to anybody else for that.
Let's go to a clip of Eastern Promises. Viggo, I sit here, I see you, you're so gestural, you talk a lot with your hands, and this is a role of total control. You are so rigid in a way, you're so controlled, your voice, I mean, an accent here. But it's just, what I loved about this performance was its absolute precision in terms of your body language.
We had to give him a lot of injections.
Clearly it worked.
Elephant tranquilizers. No, I really, it's hard. I mean, it's like watching. I remember that day. I always, when I see something, I remember the day.
Me too.
Like the previous scene, all I could think of was, remember how sunny it was when the car arrived and everything, and then it was like terrible weather. It was rain, it was black sky,
and then
it was
the day
lighting.
that we would have liked to have a stormy day. It was a beautiful sunny day.
Yeah, but it was like beautiful. Peter Sushitsky, who shot both movies, did an amazing, amazing job to compensate for that on the history. And on this one, I was thinking about that neighborhood and that diner, that fast food restaurant, and lots of things, and Jersey also, and just the fact that he was in the movie, and a lot of things. The diary also. Remember, they're talking about the diary, whether until we tried, we didn't know whether they should touch or not. Remember all that?
Yeah. The other actor, the male actor in the scene is
Jerzy Skolimowski.
Jerzy Skolimowski, who's a wonderful director in his own right, Polish director.
And the sunglasses, I love the sunglasses. I mean, Ed Harris uses the sunglasses so creatively in History of Violence, and here you see it again in Eastern Promises.
Although you didn't wear them much in the movie. But,
no, there's that first scene when Anna first sees me when she walks out, and I'm waiting by the car and stuff like that. But it was, well, I had nice.
Of course, talking about gestures, you know, you have to talk about this. Because Viggo just made that up. And he just did it on the set. I said, speaking of storyboards, because it wouldn't have been anybody's storyboard. And I said, what's that? Did you do some research, criminal? I don't know. No, I just... So now I understand that all the criminals in Moscow do this. Because they love this movie. They do.
That's funny.
Let's move to another clip from Eastern Promises, which shows a different side of Viggo. It's he's wordless in this sequence.
All in a day's work.
So a totally physical sequence. Is this something that's fun to do as an actor? Like, you look forward to the challenge of a scene like this as an actor?
Yeah, I mean, it's a puzzle, like any scene, as far as how you're going to shoot it and how to, you know, you go by degrees of, in this case, desperation, you know, and how to gauge that. that time I was thinking about was that I remember that you initially had it end there, where that guy dies.
Yeah, and then we went a little further.
Yeah, and
I cut it early. It's a little
yeah,
brutal.
no, and maybe that would have been good. I don't know. What do you think now?
I haven't seen the whole movie for a long time, so
I haven't seen
no,
it
because
since-
there's more, and it could have ended there. And we were taken to task by a review in the New Yorker who said it was perfect there, and then you blew it by going too far. But then when we showed it to people both ways, they said, "Are you crazy? You've got to show the ending." You know, in other words, the scene for them wasn't finished.
Killing the other guy.
So
yeah.
there's another little bit that maybe you should have shown this audience, but just saying. But that's a perfect scene, by the way, that to illustrate storyboarding or not. I mean, a sequence like that would be storyboarded to death normally.
Yeah.
You know,
And take
every
days
shot
and
would
days.
be pre-planned, and we totally didn't do that. What we did do was a lot of rehearsal.
And we
with-
came in and showed it to you, and Jim
yeah,
Close
and,
had
and you know, when I was shooting other scenes, the actors would be working with a stunt coordinator, and I would have said, you know, we started with the set and the space.
Yeah, you gave us a drawing, you said this, and then they taped it out in a room, and we just, like you would for a dance scene. you
Yeah.
know.
And so it was very rehearsed in terms of what happened physically, but not the way it was shot. And that was just spontaneous, me looking at it, and then that way for me it's sort of like a found art piece that I see this scene in front of me and I say, this would make a great documentary, I'm going to start shooting it. And that's how it feels to me.
You were injured in this scene, weren't you, Viggo?
No, I just had a lot of bruises. The second day was harder than the first just because I had a lot of bruises. You know, the adrenaline, you don't really, once you get going, you don't really notice it. But apparently, like Stefan, the makeup artist who was here also, I think, didn't he speak with you? He did, you know, would do the tattoos and all that. He said he spent more time covering up the second day the bruises than doing the tattoos.
Because
There's a lot of bruises the second day. That was harder, but
those tiles were hard. They were.
hard and cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it was the way you did it, even though you didn't, or maybe because you didn't have all storyboards and you didn't get so analytical about it. It was well prepared. We had rehearsed. We knew how to get over that barrier into the other room and so forth. And you organized it, and that you shot basically a couple of, like 3 masters or something. You shot the getting out of that space, and you did the space here, and then you did the space over there. And you did those big the first day, and then the second day you came in and cleaned up. You know.
Details,
Yeah. I mean,
It was
just
just
pretty efficient.
Just 2 days
Yeah.
for that.
So Eastern Promise is an immense amount of research, and an immense amount of research went into the the third film that you guys made together, Dangerous Method. So you can talk a little bit, you touched on the fact that you like to do research, and obviously for Eastern Promises and for Dangerous Method, it must have been a lot of back reading. In fact, I think in an earlier interview with you, Viggo, you talked about the research that you do for a project being from the date of birth of that character to page 1 in the screenplay. And I'm just wondering, you know, conceptually how you work that through. Do you go so deeply into it, you know, do a lot of reading, do a lot of notes, like that character is in your head up to page 1 in the screenplay?
Yeah, and no, and it's also because it's fun. And one of the things that's great about working with David is that it's like speaking with a like-minded actor or a film enthusiast, you know. I mean, working with David, I've said before that it's as if you're working with someone who just got out of film school in terms of their energy and their delight in the work. Happens to be the smartest person that ever came out of film school. But there they are, and they want to do stuff. They want to have fun and make jokes about it and take it seriously all at the same time. And that's infectious, you know. And one of the great things about preparing the movie, and even while we're shooting it, is that we talk about all these things. In the case of Eastern Promises, it wasn't just what we know and the audience doesn't know, is how did he go through that process? How could he impersonate these people? Is he one of them? Did he then turn cop? You know, all that doesn't matter if the audience knows, but it's good for us to talk about it and know, you know, it's interesting. Sometimes directors aren't interested in that. If it's not going to be on screen, I don't care, whatever. Just do your job, show up on time, do it good. do a good
I
job.
actually like that.
Yeah.
But I have to fake it for Viggo.
Pretends he's really creative and actually interested in what we're doing. But
Well, we exchanged.
no, but we ended up talking. We ended up talking about. We ended up rereading, Dostoevsky novel. All these things that are not really relevant, but anything Russian. All of a sudden, we became. We just would exchange lots of emails about any number of Russian things, whether they be poems or the actual, Vladimir Putin
Yeah.
and World War II and previous.
And the tattoos. I mean.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, there wasn't much in the script. I mean, Steve Knight's script was a lot closer to what we ended up shooting than the History of Violence script was. But it's still, I threw out a lot of stuff and changed a lot of stuff with the writer. And he wasn't too accurate with the details, like the tattoos. I mean, most of the tattoo stuff and the rituals of the tattoos came from what Viggo and I exchanged. I found a book called Rush.
Alex Lambert, who made a great documentary and it came out in like 2000 called Mark of Cain. It's about prison tattoos in Russian, prison culture, and that was
terrific.
Yeah.
And then led me to a series of books called Russian Criminal Tattoos, which is fantastic because it's a whole world of symbols and meaning and everything else that's developed by criminals in prison and expressed through their tattoos. The tattoos are like their passports and so on. None of that was really in the script. And the fight scene, for example, it literally said, two guys come in with knives, there is a fight. Sort of like that. So we had to do the rest.
So the next film was a major historic figure, Sigmund Freud, and how a different kind of challenge to take on one of the key figures of the 20th century, a real figure, not too much of a historic record in terms of photographs, and I think there were some sound recordings, et cetera, but how do you take on that challenge? I mean, the two of you, I guess, but how do you take on that challenge of playing like a real person, like one of the most influential thinkers in the history of Western civilization?
I mean, there are, as we found out, or as I found out, there are a fair amount of photographs, and there's a lot of descriptions of him at the age, when of the movie, pre-World War I, the way he looked, he was more robust. It was before he contracted, cancer, and the image that we have of him is this thin, white-haired old man, but he was quite robust, before that. And so there are images you can find, but I have to say that I didn't really. I thought that David was way off the mark. He wasn't doing himself any favors by even considering me for the role. I happened to not be available the first time that he asked me. And then the actor that was going to play the part ended up not doing it. He went and did another movie not long before they were going to start shooting. And he called and he said, look, I know that you're not, or he wrote me and said, I know that you may still not be available, but if you're interested, the part's available again. And I said, well, you really think that I'd be right? I'm not sure I'm really right for him. And he was, I mean, maybe if it had been another director, I wouldn't have gone for it. But once we started talking about the period and other aspects, it was more, I mean, I believed it. But it was really because you believed it so strongly. That's what convinced me.
I was desperate.
Nobody wanted that part. Nobody.
We
no
were going
women,
to shoot,
no
we
men.
didn't have a Freud.
Why don't we run a clip of A Dangerous Method?
That's taken word for word from a conversation between David and I. That's what David said when I asked. That was when I gave him those notes.
The voice here is so incredible. It really sets the tone for who Freud is, and I think your entire performance. And finding that voice, was that an easy thing to do? Was that something you discussed with David, or is that really your own research into the audio?
Yeah, we talked about it. I mean, the video recording you're referring to was later. There was a sound recording from the BBC, and this was the last year of his life, and his voice is very weak. I mean, he had cancer of the palate, and he'd had, I don't know how many, more than a dozen operations, and he was very weak. But at that time, it was stronger, and he was, in the descriptions of him, he was known for being able to speak you know, without notes for 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes at these conferences, and be very eloquent, never repeat himself, no hemming and hawing, and he could crack jokes and just carry on, just like a river flowing, you know. And based on the descriptions of his voice and the timbre of his voice, the way people describe that, that's what we discuss. And it took a little while to get comfortable with that, I have to say. I mean, it wasn't just, the reason I thought that I wasn't the right actor for the job was, first of all, the physical aspect of it. But then, you know, we worked out with Stefan.
We fed him a lot of Cheetos, and he gained some weight, and
Yes,
that helped.
No, that helped, but the nose and the eyes and all that stuff. The way of walking, but it was the language, you know. I mean, in movies, I'm not usually given that much text. Certainly not the 2 movies I made with David. I didn't have, you know, that much dialogue. Most of it was through gesture and reactions, non-verbal. And in this case, the guy never stops talking, basically. but it needs to be interesting. It can't just be blah blah blah. There's got to be some music to it. And you got to be specific. You got to hit certain points. There has to be a certain tone. That took a little while, but once I got comfortable with that, like anything, like a play you're rehearsing, once that clicks and you feel comfortable, then it was really fun. And I had as much fun with playing that part as any I've ever played. I mean, I really, you know, whereas at the beginning I looked at it somewhat fearfully, more so than usual, thinking, well, this is a big stretch. I don't know if I'm going to get there, and the last thing you want to do is let down the director, let down the story. But then once the voice, you know, what you're talking about, once that felt right, the tone and the rhythm, then it was great. It was fun. Every day I looked forward to that, you know. The first scene was tough, you know, there was that long scene with Kira.
Yeah, and don't forget he's doing an English accent too, because the structure of the film was, of course, they would all be speaking German. You know, my German is excellent, but I could certainly direct it in German, but we decided to go with English. So Viggo was doing an English accent. It wasn't the first time, I think, was it? But
No.
No,
but it was fun. It was also
Yeah.
very specific, you know, there was, depending on class and position, you know,
That's
the
right,
way Jung
yeah.
spoke, the way Freud, there was a slight difference. Obviously, the way Kira spoke, she chose to go with the, you know, the Russian accent, and different characters had, depending on where they were from and what their social status was and so forth. It varied, but it was a lot of fun. It was such a well-written script.
Yeah.
You know, Christopher Hampton script, beautiful.
And playing off Michael, was that, I mean, you got the Freud Young thing, the student mentor.
That was
Playing
fun.
off him was, his choices were very different than your own?
Yeah, he has a different, I think, I mean, every actor is different, no matter what they say, even if they all go to the same school, they're all different. And you're different depending on the character. I mean, the best thing an actor can do is be flexible. But there are certain things that, you know, I think that Michael is someone who, or at least at that time, and he spoke about it, is that he would just read the script over and over, which is smart, because you can read something over and over, and all of a sudden something clicks that maybe you didn't see the first few times you read it. But he was really well prepared, and he was relaxed and fun to work with. I mean, I don't care what someone does to prepare, you know, and they probably don't care what I do, as long as you connect and you communicate well on the set, which we did, and it was fun playing those scenes. And they're so well written. As an actor, you know, you have a lot more fun when the material is good. And, you know, like this, there's another scene in the study, you know, which is based on fact, that they started talking outside of the house, and then they went to the house, to the study, and had cigars and so forth, and they talked for over 13 hours, non-stop. And they were so excited to meet each other and share ideas that they didn't even realize so much time had passed, you know. And there's a really nice scene that has where you can see that enthusiasm between them, and a lot of jousting, even early on. Even though there's a lot of affection, there's, you know, testing the waters and a little bit of fencing going on all the time between them. That's fun to play. That's fun to play.
Let's turn it over to you guys now. We've got 20 minutes Q&A before we have to wrap this session, so why don't we turn the lights up and see what questions you have for David and for Viggo. And maybe before we get into the Q&A, I'd just like to mention that we've got one of the other actors who starred in David's film. Peter Weller is here, the great, great, wonderful actor who was in Naked Lunch, and he's shooting, actually.
He's shooting. I think he had to leave 15 minutes before the end. He warned us. I think.
You don't think Peter's here anymore?
I think he left.
Anyway, Peter was in the audience, and it was just fun to see.
He was here.
He was.
You were
here.
in his presence.
So,
by the
Mike's-
way, the
Mike's
show,
a-
the exhibition, anybody who hasn't seen that exhibition, I saw it just before, a little while ago today. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. And it ends Sunday, so if you want to see it again.
So I think there's one of the mics is over here, and I think somebody in the front row also.
There's a
wants.
Habs fan. Look.
So just, there's a Habs fan, yes.
I don't know what that means. Red.
Hi, Viggo. I have a question for you. Apart from your acting, I wondered if you had any other projects on the go, such as photography or any music projects that we could look forward to?
Well, I'm also a publisher, and I have a couple new books that are just about to come out. We put out 2 at the end of last year as well. I have long gestating photo show. I haven't done one for a while. I'm hoping to do something with that next year. And I've made a couple of movies with other people. They're not very good.
Yeah, I hope you got paid because
Not as much as I got
nobody's
paid.
going to see them.
No. Thank you.
Where's the next question? Where's the mic?
Here.
Have you got a mic?
No.
We need to get a mic for this person right here. And if you, yeah, go right ahead, and we'll get you next.
I love the both of you. And just want to know if you are planning on collaborating on a new movie together and possibly filming in our great Toronto area.
Well, that would always be my dream, frankly. But at the moment, we don't have a project,
Toronto would be great. I enjoyed working here.
But I always prefer to shoot here to anywhere else. Sometimes you can't because you have to be shooting in London or something like that.
How much of Maps of the Stars did you?
Maps of the Stars, that's a new movie that I've worked with some other people.
You got a couple-
Although the truth is I did offer Viggo a role in it, and he was going to do it, and then he decided to do some Spanish movie in Spanish. I don't understand. Yeah, he speaks Spanish. So, yeah, Maps was 24 days here and 5 days in LA.
Only 5.
So we did shoot it here, even though it takes place totally in LA, but a couple of palm trees here and there, and it's LA.
Well, naked Lunch, right? You
Naked
wanted to shoot all in North Africa, and you ended up shooting.
That's
had to,
that's
right?
true.
But you can't tell.
That's right. Yeah. So no, Toronto is like a great character actor. It can really become many, many different places, and it's fantastic to shoot here. So, but unfortunately, we don't at the moment have a project. But we're constantly, well, I'm constantly looking. He's constantly being evasive. In fact, you'll find that there is actually no Cronenberg exhibit here. This was all a ploy for me to get Viggo to come to Toronto. He fell for him.
There's a couple of DVDs on a little table out in the hall. That's it. Used.
Go ahead.
Hi, I love the way you two enjoy each other, and I think that's what makes your collaboration so great. Do many more. But I'm fascinated in this multiple personality thing, and you've both had experiences separately and together. I want to know the difference between you, Viggo, playing an actor playing 2 separate characters, as in everybody has a plan, and with you, Mr. Cronenberg, Dead Ringers. What's the difference between that and one person, like in History of Violence, playing 2 personalities, but he's one person? And I want to know, when you are Tom, are you Tom playing Joey playing Tom? Are you Are you Viggo playing Tom?
You're
Are you
confusing me.
Viggo playing Joey? And yeah, I'm fascinated by that really cloudy line. And how do you do it? And is there a difference?
I think a total reshoot, really, of History of Violence. We have to go back and
Is in
remake it.
order, yeah.
Yeah, and do it her way.
I think, yep. If we had met you a few years ago. No, well, everyone has a plan. I played two twin brothers, and they're quite different. And then, obviously, in History of Violence, it's a person who's taken on a whole nother life, gesture, speech, everything. But I think that, as you were asking, I was thinking, what is this? You know, it's not so different because, in a way, you know, the one person is wanting to believe he's not like that other person, even if deep inside he knows he is. And the two brothers, they're doing the same thing. I'm not like him. And yet, the more you get to know each other, it's just like with parents. Oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be like my parents. I'm not going to be like my dad or whatever. And as you get older, you end up being more and more like them. I think it's inevitable. You know, be careful what you hate, because you're going to probably resemble it gradually somehow. You know what I mean? So in that sense, but you know, practically speaking, yeah, it was a different thing. You know, like the scene that we saw from History of Violence and other moments that we discussed where you're gauging it. You're always both, you know, but when you, just like when I'm acting, you know, I'm playing, I didn't go around, say, you know, the set of, well, any movie, asking people, some actors do that, it helps them, whatever works, you know, to call me by the character. Don't call me Viggo, call me Sigmund Freud, call me Joey, whatever. But you do, I mean, that's part of the make-believe part, that's the fun part, you know. It's what kids do, you know. You don't have to tell kids to be Superman. They are Superman. They know better than you what Superman is. They know better than you whatever they're playing. And as an actor, you're just continuing that in a more elaborate way, in a more nuanced way, hopefully. But only when you do your best work are you approaching what was really pure as a kid, which was there was no question, there was no fear or you know, trembling at the moment of absolute belief, you know. And as an actor, whatever your technique is, your teachers, your directors, the script, whatever your props, your rehearsal, whatever you do to get there, you're trying to basically get back to something that's quite simple. I am that person. There's no question about it. I don't even have to think about it. You know, that's what you're trying to do. And I think that Tom, Joey, you know, when Tom is being Tom, he really is Tom. That's what's complicated about it. You know, it would have been boring if, I think, and we talked about that, you know, another approach would have been, okay, let's make a marked difference between them. And that would have been caricature, and it wouldn't have been as disturbing. You could have said as an audience, oh yeah, I see him now. Rather than, the most interesting parts were when it was that mixture of both of them, or all three of them, you know. And when I was playing the Argentine movie where there's two brothers, I played three different parts as well, because one brother dies, and then the other brother wants to take the other brother's place. And there's a third character that never succeeds. He can't really be his brother, much as he tries, puts on his clothes, looks like him. So there's the mixture, the gray areas are what are interesting in storytelling, I think, and writing and art generally. And, you know, that's the kind of director that David is. He doesn't want the easy answer. He wants the interesting answer. You know?
For me, doing Dead Ringer as well, it was before digital and film. And so I had to occupy myself a lot more with technology, with the technique of twinning one person. And to kind of figure out a way to do that without it being obvious or controlling everything. And I watched a lot of twins movies, and I saw that they really, when they found a shot that they could show both of the two twins together, they would hold the shot a lot longer than you normally would, you know, because they were very conscious of doing it, and it cost some money to get it to happen. And I was determined not to do that. I wanted to make sure that if I was really not showing both faces normally, then I wouldn't do it, even though I had the technology to do it. But some of the shots were quite complex. And that's not something that I would ever have to do in History of Violence, you know, when you have one.
We did have to do it in the Argentine movie, though. There was, I mean, they had a very low budget, and I remember calling you
That's right.
and asking you. I said, you know, we're going to do this. It's not a lot that you see them together. First of all, they don't have the budget, and the story, the nature of it wasn't such that you constantly saw them. But there was a sequence of 3 scenes where you do see them.
Did you
together.
have to listen to yourself with an earpiece?
I didn't. The way we did it was no. We had there was someone who read the lines, you know, but I would listen to it and watch the playback of what we had done. But I remember asking you. You said, you know, what. You know, I was working on just the differences between the two to make it subtle, and it was things that I was kind of. What you said was, I was sort of in the beginning stages of that anyway. It sort of confirmed just simple, practical things like the weight on the back of on your heels or front. Yeah. Just little things like that can, if it's appropriate, can trigger you. And there were little things. But what we did is that we would shoot the plate where I would, first we would practice the scene, you know, with a stand-in and do that so that we could figure out the blocking. And then we'd shoot the plate where there was the shots where we were both together. I'd have to do everything. As the one brother, also he had to have a shorter beard, and there was a different look. So we did 2 days of one brother, doing all the, you know, the 3 different scenes, and then we did 2 days of the other brother, doing them all. And each time I would look at it, and they'd say, okay, you can see where the drawer is, and the handle here, and this. You can go that far, but no further. And when you pat your brother on the back, it has to be, see, you can line it up with this thing on the wall. It was like that kind of thing. Yeah. And sometimes we do the whole scene, and that was great. One, he goes, no, you put your hand right through him. Yeah. I'm like, all right. And I thought it was right, you know, but it was just, it's very, did you have to do it like that?
Exactly, yeah. And weird things. I mean, we did one shot with Jeremy Irons, the 2 Jeremy Ironses walking through a cafeteria and talking. That took as long to shoot as the fight scene in Eastern Promises. It took 2 days to shoot that one shot. And Jeremy would do one half of it, but then we would but it was a motion control. The camera was computerized so that it would do the same move exactly twice. But for him to converse with himself, to get the rhythm right, he had to listen to what he did as the first brother. Now he's playing the second brother. He has to have an earpiece playing back what he did as the first brother. Yeah. And you also get weird things like the shadow of the stand-in falls across the split.
The line.
And so half of the shadow was Jeremy and half of the shadow was a stand-in. I mean, it gets very tricky. Yeah. And in those days, you couldn't just move things around digitally after the fact, which is something you could do now, or erase them. You were stuck with that stuff. So it was very tricky. So for a director, a more pure thing to do what we did in History of Violence, that is, you know, one actor who's playing 2 separate people, but never at the same time. I hope that answers your question.
Next question, I can't see you, so the person with the mic, just go right ahead.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Really enjoyed this conversation. I was reading, Viggo, a quote that you had in the Globe and Mail today where you talked about channeling the inner 6-year-old, and you did refer to that a few times. And I'm wondering when you came to that realization in your career, or in your acting career, was it early on? Is it something they tell you in acting school, or is it something you kind of learn
to be childish?
I think it was when he was 6 and he's never looked back.
No.
Yeah, I really liked that quote because you're right. I think children have no fear at that age, or
no embarrassment, I suppose, or no shame.
No shame.
No shame. But David and I have worked up to where we have very little shame about most.
We are shameless. It's actually true for a director too, I have to say. Yeah. You can take yourself very seriously, and you can tie yourself up in knots with theory or with, you know, competitiveness or the history of cinema or all kinds of stuff. And I've said this a lot, ad nauseum probably, but it is like, you know, you're in a sandbox together, you know, and you're putting on mustaches and pretending to be people you're not, and you're doing it in a very artless, pure, way. There's a lot of play. There's a lot of childlike play that goes on in making any movie, and that can get overwhelmed because of the money and the pressure and the, all kinds of other stuff. But it's really at the heart of it is that make-believe thing that you do. I didn't say make-believe. I said make-believe.
I was also wondering.
But those who
It becomes a habit.
Those actors who want to inhabit on another person
I was also.
do so at their peril.
Thank you.
I think
And
there's
was
a
also
question
wondering-
way at the back.
Hello?
Not having any shame. My question is about the fight scene in Eastern Promises. When you're doing a scene like that, which is that physical, but you're also stark naked in it, how do you psych yourself up, or how do you prepare yourself so that you don't have the apprehensions, but you're also executing on what you need to, i.e., such raw, real fight scene? And David, how do you actually shoot those scenes where you're showing the real fight, but also you're very artfully or tactically or strategically keeping it artful, not quite making it stark?
Were you were naked in that scene? I thought you had that little bikini thing.
I didn't think, I didn't think it was that artful, really. No,
he's right.
In the sense that,
No,
we
Viggo's
just went
completely
for
right,
it.
because
we weren't trying to hide anything. I mean, if anything, later I look at it and go, maybe I should have been a little more, No, but not really. I mean, we did it thinking, well, this is what would really happen. That's the idea, right? This is how it would look.
Yeah, it's only artful in that we think it's good cinema, but the crucial thing was that I didn't have to worry about not showing this, not tilting down too much or up or whatever. I didn't have those restrictions because Viggo was shameless, basically. I mean, and I mean that in a good way. We talked about it, and Viggo read. We saw what the choreography was going to be, which we liked, and then Viggo said, so, obviously I'm going to have to do this naked. And I said, yeah. And there was no more discussion, basically. Well, you don't get that with every actor, obviously. But in fact, I didn't have to worry at all about how I was shooting it. And I didn't, in terms of nudity or not nudity, what I'm showing or what I'm not showing. I had complete freedom. So everything in that sequence is exactly what I would have wanted, and I didn't have to worry about that. And that's, once more, a collaboration of trust, I mean, I had a monitor on the set which, and I always do this, the actors can look at anything they want, and there are some directors who are very possessive about the image, and they don't want the actors to see themselves because they worry about I don't know what. But I've never had a problem with that. And the actor usually will look at a scene or not, depending. Some actors really don't like to see themselves. And other actors, like Viggo, Viggo normally looks at a take he did and he laughs uproariously. And it's because he's at ease with that. Some actors are not. But in terms of nudity, I do this anytime I do a nude scene. There's only one monitor for that because we're all worried about, images getting onto the internet. Excuse me one second.
The guys that were, the other two guys in that scene were really good too. The big guy was a Turkish-British boxer, heavyweight boxer.
He's a boxer, yeah.
And the other guy was, he was Georgian, but he had been in the Russian army, and he had training in because when we started seeing the choreography, he goes, oh yeah, that's this and that. And I said, and then I showed him this, remember those books I found in Russia? He goes, yeah, that's our training manual.
Yeah.
It was like, that was interesting.
No, it was pretty accurate. I mean, but the monitor is there for the actor to look at any time, and I do any news.
That was the one day I didn't look. I should have looked.
We could have done
What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, you know, in the digital era, you can change some things after the fact. And this was in the digital era. But we didn't. You know, some of the blood in the scene, in the part of the scene that you never got to see because Pierce, you know, censored it, there was some blood that could only be done digitally. And it was very effective. But it's a matter of trust. If the actor wants to see what a nude scene looks like, they're free to look at it on my set. And that, usually they end up not doing it. They're just knowing that they could. It just means that I have fooled them. And I can now betray them.
Trust me.
So sadly, on this note of Viggo's nakedness and my censorship, we're going to have to end this conversation. So we've got another house to bring in for History of Violence. For those of you staying behind, you're going to see a wonderful film, I think one of David's strongest. It's a film I absolutely love, so I urge you to stay.
Thank you for this
Viggo.
incredible experience with
Thank you.
Thank you for being such a wonderful audience, David,
Thank
Viggo.
you.
And I hope you guys end up collaborating again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I can't do that. But I'll take it, and I hope that someday,
Yeah. At
They
home,
play- they play
when
a
he's alone,
championship
he does it.
series together.
Thank you.